Life, as they say, is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And for Arthur Thorne, a man who had meticulously planned every single moment of his 6 decades, life was about to throw an unexpected curveball on a scorching Arizona afternoon. He was a titan, a legend in the cutthroat world of tech, a man whose net worth could fund small nations. His estate in Willow Creek, Arizona, wasn't just a house. It was a testament to a lifetime of relentless ambition, a fortress of solitude built from sheer will and countless zeros. Yet, for all the gleaming chrome and polished marble, a profound emptiness often echoed through its vast, quiet halls. This isn't just a story about a flat tire. It's about how a seemingly insignificant hiccup in a wealthy man's perfectly curated day led him to a forgotten stretch of highway, to a dusty roadside, and ultimately to a revelation that would shatter his perceptions of success, purpose, and what it truly means to be rich. Get ready, because what happened next didn't just change Arthur Thorne's life. It redefined the very meaning of generosity and connection, proving that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest acts of kindness. This is the tale of an unseen hand, a haunting smile, and a journey that proves the greatest treasures aren't found in what you accumulate, but in what you give. Arthur Thorne had everything money could buy. A sprawling estate in Willow Creek, Arizona, with manicured lawns that stretched further than the eye could see, and a garage filled with gleaming high-performance machines. He was in his late 60s, a titan of the tech world, retired with a fortune that most people couldn't even dream of. Yet, as he eased his sleek black Continental Navigator down a desolate stretch of highway outside Sunset Valley, a familiar emptiness gnawed at him. He was a king in his castle, but that castle felt more like a gilded cage. Years of ruthless ambition and relentless pursuit of success had left him with an overflowing bank account, but a painfully hollow heart. Relationships were transactional, conversations were negotiations, and genuine human connection, a concept as distant as a fading memory. The searing Arizona sun beat down, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage. Then, with a sudden jolt and a sickening thud, the Navigator lurched. A flat tire. Arthur slammed his palm against the steering wheel, a wave of frustrated helplessness washing over him. He was used to things working in his favor, to problems disappearing with a single phone call. But out here, in the middle of nowhere, his satellite phone stubbornly refused to connect. He tried again, then again, the signal bars mocking his mounting irritation. He sighed, a heavy, resigned sound. He, Arthur Thorne, the man who built empires, was stranded. Just as the first beads of sweat began to prickle his brow, he saw him, a figure emerging from the heat haze, walking with a steady, unhurried pace. It was a young man, perhaps 16 or 17, wearing faded jeans and a well-worn T-shirt. He carried an old canvas backpack, suggesting he'd been on foot for a while. Leo, as Arthur would soon learn, hailed from dusty roads, a humble community nestled in the forgotten corners of the county. He wasn't a roadside assistance crew. He was just walking. Leo approached the Continental, his eyes sharp and observant, taking in the scene. There was no hesitation, no judgment, just a quiet confidence. "Got a flat, sir?" he asked, his voice calm and clear amidst the buzzing of the desert. Arthur, still reeling from the unexpected appearance, nodded. Yes, my phone's got no signal out here. Was hoping for a bit of help." Leo simply smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that seemed to reach his eyes. "I can help with that," he said, and without another word knelt beside the tire. "My grandpa taught me how to change a tire last summer. Said it's a good skill to have." Arthur watched, fascinated, as Leo worked swiftly, his hands moving with an practiced ease that belied his youth. There was no showmanship, just focused, efficient motion. A strange humility began to creep over Arthur, a feeling he hadn't experienced in what felt like decades. When Leo finally stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans, the spare tire was securely in place. "All done," he said, offering that simple, satisfied smile again. Arthur fumbled in his wallet, pulling out a handful of crisp bills, far more than anyone would expect for such a simple act. "Here, take this," he offered, extending the money. "I truly appreciate your help." But Leo took a step back, raising a hand politely. "Thank you, sir, but I don't need anything. Just happy to help." Arthur froze, the money still clutched in his hand. He watched, stunned, as Leo gave a small nod, turned, and continued his walk down the road, his figure slowly diminishing in the rearview mirror. It was a twist Arthur hadn't seen coming, a completely selfless act in a world where every favor, every interaction seemed to come with a hidden price tag. As he finally slipped the money back into his wallet and pulled away, the image of Leo's sincere smile, unburdened by expectation, remained etched in his mind. It was a subtle yet profound shift in Arthur's carefully constructed world, a quiet whisper that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than the bottom line. He knew, with a certainty that surprised even himself, that this wouldn't be the last he saw of young Leo. True generosity, he was beginning to understand, wasn't about what you gave, but what you asked for nothing in return. Back in his sprawling Willow Creek estate, the silence of Arthur's mansion usually felt like a comforting blanket, but that evening it was a heavy shroud. The polished marble floors, the priceless artwork, the hum of the climate control, all the trappings of his immense wealth suddenly felt hollow, even sterile. The memory of Leo's simple, unburdened smile and that polite refusal of money played on a loop in his mind. It was a dissonant chord in the symphony of his meticulously organized life, a ghost that haunted the gilded halls of his own making. For decades, Arthur had navigated a world of calculated exchanges. Every handshake, every dinner invitation, every seemingly casual conversation held an unspoken weight, a potential return on investment. His empire wasn't built on chance encounters, but on strategic alliances and shrewd negotiations. He remembered countless instances of colleagues offering favors that inevitably came with an unseen price tag, or business partners who presented gifts expecting a larger one in return. He had perfected the art of the transactional relationship, believing it was the only way to succeed. This was the common mistake of his world, believing every interaction must have a tangible return, that genuine altruism was a myth. But Leo was different. He hadn't asked for a business card, hadn't hinted at a future opportunity, hadn't even accepted a reward. He had simply helped, then walked away. This purity of intention was a foreign concept to Arthur, and it unsettled him to his core. He found himself pacing his study, Scotch untouched, the memory of Leo's worn sneakers and the dust on his hands painting a stark contrast to his own pristine existence. Why couldn't he shake it? Why did this brief encounter with a complete stranger feel more significant than any multi-million-dollar deal he'd ever closed? The next morning, an inexplicable urge propelled Arthur out of his mansion. It wasn't logic, it wasn't a business objective, it was a primal human pull. Was it guilt for his own past coldness, gratitude for the unexpected kindness, or a desperate, unacknowledged need for something real, something that money couldn't buy? Whatever it was, he found himself back on that same desolate highway, his gaze scanning the horizon, an almost frantic hope rising within him. He drove for hours, stopping at dusty gas stations and small roadside diners, a man utterly out of his element. He tried to describe Leo, awkwardly fumbling for words that captured the boy's quiet dignity. Most people just shrugged or shook their heads, their faces blank. This was his first taste of a world where his name and wealth held no sway, where connections were built differently. He was trying to find a needle in a haystack, and his usual authoritative tone fell flat in these humble surroundings. Just as frustration began to curdle in his stomach, he pulled into a small, unassuming diner nestled off the main road, the kind of place he'd usually drive right past. Behind the counter, an older woman with kind, observant eyes wiped it down with a practiced hand. He tentatively described Leo. Her eyes softened, a faint smile touching her lips. "Sounds like young Leo Maxwell," she said, her voice warm. "He's always helping folks around here. Lives with his aunt, Miss Elena, just down the road by the old Cedar Creek Mill and Dusty Roads." A wave of relief, so potent it almost buckled his knees, washed over Arthur. He had a name. He had a direction. The town of Dusty Roads was an hour's drive away, a place nestled in the rugged, less traveled parts of Arizona. As he navigated the winding roads, leaving behind the manicured perfection of Willow Creek for the raw, untamed beauty of the desert, Arthur felt a growing anticipation. He was on the cusp of something new, something that promised to be profoundly different from anything he'd ever known. He expected to find hardship, perhaps even poverty, but a deeper part of him sensed he might discover a different kind of wealth entirely. The journey to Dusty Roads was a passage, not just through landscapes, but through Arthur's perception of the world. The sleek black Continental Navigator glided past the manicured perfection of Willow Creek, gradually giving way to a more rugged, untamed Arizona. The scenery shifted from golf courses to rolling desert hills, then to scattered, unassuming homes that seemed to rise organically from the earth. When he finally arrived, Dusty Roads wasn't the desolate, poverty-stricken place his mind had conjured. It was a community. Worn, yes, but tidy, with a palpable sense of resilience etched into its very fabric. Homes, though modest, bore signs of loving care. A well-tended garden here, a freshly swept porch there. Arthur followed the diner owner's directions, eventually pulling up to a small house near the old Cedar Creek mill. It was undeniably old, the paint faded, but it stood with a quiet dignity. The tiny yard was swept clean, and a makeshift swing fashioned from an old tire hung from a sturdy mesquite tree. Taking a deep breath, a flicker of apprehension mixed with the strange excitement, Arthur stepped out of his car and knocked on the door. A moment later, it opened to reveal Elena Maxwell, Leo's aunt. In her late 40s or early 50s, she looked tired, perhaps from a lifetime of hard work, but her eyes held a remarkable warmth and a keen, intelligent spark. She sized Arthur up, taking in his tailored suit and polished shoes, a slight curiosity on her face. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice calm and steady. "Good morning," Arthur began, clearing his throat, suddenly feeling like a clumsy giant in this humble setting. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I believe I met your nephew yesterday, Leo. He helped me with a flat tire." Alina's expression softened instantly, a knowing smile touching her lips. "That sounds just like my Leo," she said, a quiet pride in her tone. "He's always helping folks, that boy." Arthur explained he wanted to thank Leo properly, as the boy wouldn't accept anything yesterday. Elena simply nodded, stepping aside to let him in. "He's out back, mending the fence." "You're welcome to wait." Arthur stepped inside, and his world momentarily tilted on its axis. The house was small, the furniture old but meticulously clean. The walls were adorned not with expensive art, but with faded family photos and vibrant hand-drawn pictures that looked like they belonged to a much younger Leo. It was a stark contrast to his own mansion's pristine, impersonal surfaces. Yet something about this space felt undeniably warmer, more alive, filled with an invisible hum of connection and genuine human experience. He followed Elena out to the small backyard, where Leo was indeed working on a rickety fence, his brow furrowed in concentration. The boy looked up, surprised to see Arthur. "Hey, mister," Leo said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What are you doing here?" Arthur smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that surprised even himself. "I wanted to thank you again, Leo. You helped me when I really needed it, and, well, I just couldn't stop thinking about it." Leo shrugged, his expression easy and genuine. It wasn't a big deal, but to Arthur it was. And as he sat at their small, mismatched kitchen table a short while later, sharing a hearty, home-cooked meal, a steaming bowl of stew and freshly baked cornbread, he realized just how big a deal it truly was. This wasn't the gourmet fare of his own home, but it was prepared with love and shared with a warmth he hadn't tasted in years. Elena shared stories of their community, of neighbors looking out for one another, of making do with what they had. Leo, initially shy, opened up, talking about his school, his friends, and his quiet dream of becoming a civil engineer, of building things that lasted, perhaps even rebuilding parts of their small community. Arthur listened, truly listened, perhaps for the first time in his life. He looked past the patched-up fence and the worn-out swing set, seeing beyond the material scarcity. He saw the genuine laughter, the unwavering support, the quiet strength that radiated from this family. They didn't have much, but they had an abundance of what Arthur had desperately lacked: connection, purpose, and a profound sense of belonging. He thought of his own childhood, spent in a home not so different from this one, where his parents had worked tirelessly, instilling values of hard work and perseverance. He had drifted from those lessons, consumed by the pursuit of wealth, forgetting the simple truths. Sitting there in that small, humble kitchen, Arthur felt an odd sense of nostalgia and, yes, regret. He understood with crystal clarity that true wealth wasn't measured by the balance in his bank account, but by the richness of a life filled with heart and resilience. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that he couldn't walk away without doing something truly meaningful for this family. This wasn't about charity, it was about acknowledging a profound truth they had awakened within him. Leaving the Maxwells' humble home that afternoon, Arthur Thorne felt a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The air in Willow Creek, usually so crisp and clear, now felt thick with the weight of his unfulfilled life. He drove back to his sprawling estate, not to retreat into isolation, but with a new burning purpose. This wasn't about charity, a simple handout to ease his conscience. No, this was about honoring Leo's selflessness and supporting the family's quiet resilience. It was about a debt that couldn't be paid with money alone. Arthur knew with a certainty that settled deep in his soul that Leo and Elena deserved more than patched fences and worn furniture. They deserved stability, opportunity, and recognition for the profound strength they carried every single day. Back in his study, the familiar glow of his expensive monitor seemed different. It wasn't a portal to stock market data or corporate reports, but to a newfound mission. He began making calls, lots of them. He reached out to old colleagues, not for business deals, but for recommendations. Contractors he'd worked with on his own lavish properties, architects whose designs he'd admired, suppliers he'd trusted for years. His sharp business acumen, honed over decades of cutthroat competition, was now laser-focused on something entirely different. By midday, a plan was set in motion, intricate and ambitious, yet born from the simplest act of kindness. Within a week, the quiet rhythm of dusty roads was interrupted by the arrival of large trucks and a flurry of workers. Arthur stood on the sidewalk, a clipboard in hand, directing the renovations with the same meticulous precision he once applied to billion-dollar mergers. Leo and Elena emerged from their house, their faces a mixture of disbelief and awe as they watched the crew unload supplies. "Mr. Thorne," Elena began, her voice trembling slightly, "you didn't have to do this. We managed just fine on our own." Arthur turned her, his expression earnest, devoid of any pretense. "You've done more than managed, Miss Maxwell," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "You've thrived, against odds most people couldn't imagine. But you gave me something I didn't know I was missing, a reminder of what truly matters. Let me give back." Leo stood beside his aunt, quieter than usual, a thoughtful look on his face. He looked from the bustling crew to Arthur, a silent question in his eyes. Arthur knelt slightly, meeting Leo's gaze. "You taught me something, Leo," he said, his voice steady. "Helping people isn't about money. It's about showing up, and I want to show up for you." This wasn't a handout. It was an investment in a future, a profound shift from superficial charity to genuine support. Over the next several weeks, the little house underwent a remarkable transformation. The sagging porch was replaced with sturdy, gleaming wood. The roof, once leaky and worn, was expertly repaired. Even the old, rusty tire swing in the backyard was replaced with a brand new set, sparkling in the Arizona sun. Inside, walls were painted in warm, inviting tones, the floors polished to a shine, and the tiny kitchen upgraded with modern, efficient appliances. At first, Leo, ever the helpful soul, tried to join the work, carrying planks and sweeping debris, but Arthur gently insisted he take a break. "Your job, Leo," Arthur said with a rare smile, "is to enjoy being a kid for a little while." Still, Leo couldn't resist sneaking out to watch the crew. His eyes lit up with an insatiable curiosity as he observed them measure, cut, and build. One burly worker, a foreman named Big Mike, noticed Leo's keen interest. Mike, a man who built things with his hands and heart, saw something special in the boy. He invited Leo to help measure wood planks, patiently answering his torrent of questions about tools, blueprints, and construction techniques. Before long, Leo's natural aptitude for engineering began to blossom, an unexpected gift emerging from the dust and sawdust. Arthur watched from a distance, a warm pride swelling in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something truly meaningful, something far beyond himself. The boy's boundless energy and inquisitive mind reminded him of the pure ambition he once possessed, before life became a blur of boardrooms and stock portfolios. He realized that giving back wasn't a chore, it was a profound privilege, a way to connect, to nurture, and to find a purpose that had long eluded him. He was no longer just the wealthy recluse. He was becoming an unseen hand of kindness, and the reward he discovered was immeasurable. The final day of the renovation project in Dusty Roads felt less like a construction wrap-up and more like a community celebration. The little house, once tired and worn, now radiated a quiet strength, a beacon of hope in the heart of the neighborhood. Neighbors, drawn by the vibrant energy, stopped by to admire the transformation, offering smiles, fresh-baked bread, jars of homemade jam, and even a potted plant as housewarming gifts. Leo's laughter, bright and uninhibited, echoed through the yard as he eagerly showed his friends the new swing set, its chains gleaming under the Arizona sun, and the freshly painted rooms inside. The air hummed with a simple, unfiltered joy that Arthur Thorne hadn't felt in years. He stood on the new front porch, leaning against the sturdy railing, watching the scene unfold. For too long, his own life had been defined by acquisition and influence, a relentless pursuit of more. But none of it, he realized now, had ever filled him the way this did. This profound contentment, born from seeing others thrive. Alina Maxwell walked over, a cup of iced tea in her hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Mr. Thorne," she said softly, offering him the glass, "you've done more than fix a house. You've given us hope. And I think," she added, her gaze thoughtful, "you've found something for yourself, too." Arthur nodded, taking a slow sip. "I have, Elena," he admitted, the words a raw confession. "I spent so many years chasing things I thought mattered. Money, status, power. But none of it feels like this. None of it ever truly filled me the way this has." It was a profound realization, a plot twist in the narrative of his own life. The successful man had been the one truly stranded, and an act of simple kindness from a young boy had been the unexpected rescue. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of gold and deep orange, Leo joined them on the porch, his energy still boundless. He looked at Arthur, his expression thoughtful, mature beyond his years. "Mr. Arthur," he began, using the new, softer name he'd adopted, "I've been thinking a lot about what you did for us. One day, I want to do something like that. I want to help people, too." Arthur placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, a warmth spreading through him. "You already are, Leo," he said, his voice steady. "Your kindness set all of this in motion. Don't ever lose that." It was a simple lesson, yet profoundly powerful. True generosity isn't just an act. It's a transformative journey for both the giver and the receiver. The three of them sat together, watching the sky shift, the warmth of the day lingering, but a deeper warmth, one born of connection, gratitude, and a shared sense of purpose, settling in. When it was time for Arthur to leave, Leo and Alina walked him to his Continental Navigator. Leo's wide grin and Alina's tearful, grateful smile were etched into Arthur's memory as he drove away. This wasn't the end, he realized. This was just the beginning. The weeks that followed brought even more changes. Leo's newfound curiosity about construction blossomed into an undeniable passion. Arthur, true to his word, became his mentor. He arranged for Leo to spend time shadowing Big Mike and other engineers on different construction sites, soaking up every bit of knowledge. It wasn't a one-time charity. It was an investment in a future, a living legacy. Arthur, in turn, found himself drawn back to Dusty Roads again and again. Each visit felt less like a trip and more like a return home. He was no longer an outsider. He was part of something bigger now. For the first time in decades, he was content, having learned that the most valuable things in life aren't found in what you accumulate, but in what you give. It was a lesson learned on a deserted highway, taught by an unexpected hand, and it would forever change the course of his life and the life of a young boy with a boundless heart. And so, the story of Arthur Thorne and young Leo Maxwell continues, a living testament to the ripple effect of genuine human connection. Arthur didn't just rebuild a house, he rebuilt a family's hope, and in doing so, found his own lost purpose. He no longer saw the world through the cold transactional lens of business deals. Instead, he found richness in shared laughter, in the quiet wisdom of Elena, and in the boundless potential of Leah. His visits to dusty roads became less like trips and more like a return home, a place where his vast wealth finally found its true value, not in accumulating more, but in enriching the lives of others. Leo, fueled by Arthur's unexpected mentorship, began his journey toward becoming an engineer, his dreams no longer just whispers in the desert wind, but tangible paths laid out before him. He learned not only the mechanics of building, but also the deeper lesson that kindness, once given freely, creates an unbreakable foundation for the future. This story isn't just about a wealthy man helping a less fortunate family. It's a powerful reminder for all of us, especially those who have felt lost, betrayed, or burdened by life's hardships. It teaches us that compassion can break through the strongest walls, that even in our darkest moments, an unexpected hand can guide us towards the light. And perhaps the most profound lesson of all, true wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you share, by the connections you forge, and by the lasting legacy of kindness you leave behind. It's a story about finding your way home, not to a place, but to a purpose,